Hey there, Dr. Christianson here. Excited to talk with you about resistant starch, one of my favorite topics. So, the big health issues we face relate to how we burn fuel, our energy production, our body weight, our blood sugar metabolism, our aging. It's all about fuel metabolism. The other big category of things relates to gut health, and of course those overlap. But our gut is all about our immune system, our detoxification, our brain health, our body's regulatory pathways. And I can think of few things that affect all of that more significantly than resistant starch. So let's dig in and talk about what this stuff is. So carbohydrate, there's many forms of carbohydrate, and they're categorized into digestible and non-digestible. Digestible carbohydrates, you get about 5 calories per gram, and your body uses insulin and glucagon to regulate them. Now, indigestible carbohydrates, that's fiber. No calories, no hormonal regulation, but no fuel too. They feed the flora. Now, resistant starch is the best of both worlds. So it's about half the calories, but it's fiber, and yet it's better than fiber. It's more powerful and more useful than other strains of completely indigestible fiber. So it's talked about in various categories. There's one type called RS, resistant starch 1, which is completely indigestible. It's within plant cell walls. It's not as clear if that one is really helpful or not, but we do know it's there. So in terms of comprehensiveness, I'm going to mention it. RS2, that's the main one that's had the most research. And that's a version we do end up integrating with our bowel flora and digesting, getting some calories out of. RS3, this is kind of neat. So when something that has resistant starch is cooled, it can actually crystallize more resistant starch. This is called retrogradation, and that's RS3. So sushi rice, cooled potatoes, those get more resistant starch than they had before they were cooled. There's also, in terms of completeness, RS4, RS5. These are synthetic forms of resistant starch that are not found in food sources. Not important things, not a lot of data on them. So which foods are the highest in RS? Well, the two biggest categories would be legumes and tubers. So we're talking about beans. The white beans are the very highest, so that's navy, northern, and cannellini beans. But also we see peas, lentils, pinto beans, black beans, navy beans, garbanzos. They're all really rich sources. So the white are a little bit highest. So peas themselves, in pea starch, there's a high amylopectin RS2 pea starch that's probably had the bulk of clinical research done on it. So when we talk about the benefits of resistant starch, we're mostly talking about papers that were done on high amylopectin RS2 pea starch, which is why I use that in my shake and want to put more of it in there. So beans, legumes, they're the biggest category. Then we've got tubers, and that's going to be potatoes especially. Now, all types of potatoes are really high in RS. They're highest in it uncooked. You don't want to eat uncooked potatoes on a regular basis. Cooking, they still have quite a bit, and they're wonderful foods. There's some in sweet potatoes. They're actually different foods botanically. They're not quite as high. Potatoes that have colored flesh, like the red fleshed or the purple fleshed potatoes, are a little bit higher. But again, all potatoes are awesome. Now, of course, potato chips and french fries, not much RS and not much health benefit, way too much caloric density, so we would not consider those in this list of potatoes. How they're cooked does affect it. So baked versus boiled will yield much more RS. Take some good potatoes. I love organic Yukon Golds, and wash them really well. Make sure they're not sprouting or any green stuff. Trim that off if they do. Chop them into quarters. Drop them in a large pot of boiling water for 12, 13 minutes, somewhere around there. I do like to salt the water first too. And take them out. Don't immediately refrigerate. Let them sit and come down to room temperature. Then you can throw them in the refrigerator and take them out, reheat them, refrigerate them again. The RS keeps going up with repeated coolings and uses. So by far the densest practical source, really good things. Next up, we think about bananas and plantains as having some as well. And they do, not so much when they're ripe and good and tasty, more so when they're unripe. Another cool trick is that bananas actually have a lot in their peel. So peels are safe to eat, they're non-toxic, you can completely use them. You definitely want organic, and you want them either cooked pretty well, in which case you'd want unripe ones that you would cut, clean, and saute. almost like eggplant or like a heartier vegetable like that, so you want to cook for a while. Or take the ripe ones that are also organic and just blend the heck out of those into your shake. So those work out really well. Other foods that have this, there's some in barley. Now barley is a gluten-containing grain. It is not a gliadin-containing grain. So celiac, better to avoid. Gluten sensitivities, some do tolerate, so it can be an option, especially barley that's been cooled. And then brown rice, rice in general, especially cooked and refrigerated, does have some. So some of the documented health benefits, cancer risk, that's been a huge one. So much data on this. So colorectal cancers, bowel cancers, they remain among the top preventable causes of death in adults. So big things we'd love to do with less of in the world. Australia has known that they're higher than many other nations in terms of colon cancer. They did give guidelines before to raise dietary fiber intake in hopes to help that, but research has now shown that dietary fiber that's indigestible really doesn't seem to work in the same ways. It lacks the benefit, but resistant starch does. And there's actually programs taking place right now to fortify foods with resistant starch in Australia to cut their bowel cancer risk because it's so significant. So resistant starch causes butyrate to form in your colon. And that's this wonderful stuff that makes the cells less inflamed, makes the DNA more stable. Lots of good things happen from that. So that's one big category of benefits is cancer risks. Other cancers have been shown to be lower risk by having more RS in the diet also. Then we think about blood sugar metabolism. So how stable your blood sugar is how long you can go without big ups and downs. It's been popular to say now that if you're ketogenic or on a high-fat diet, you've got the best blood sugar. It's actually not true. So your body always runs off of glucose, whether you're eating foods you make into glucose or not. You've still got to make glucose. If you're consuming no carbohydrate, your glucose production still can be very erratic because you're making it from your muscle tissue. You're eating up muscles to make into that glucose. So food sources that are slower digested work better, and RS is actually in a class by itself. It can take 7 to 9 hours to completely break down a meal high in RS. So for that long, your blood sugar is more steady, you're making less insulin and glucagon, and you're not in a storage mode. So the cool thing about that is you're also not as hungry. You're not getting cravings, you're not getting your energy jumping up and down. Many also notice that means better quality of sleep. Really commonly, waking up at night becomes because you've gone to sleep, but your blood sugar tanked, and that spike of cortisol to raise your blood sugar woke you up again. So RS can improve upon that as well. So wonderful stuff, great in the diet. Many studies were showing that benefits show up with as little as a few thousand milligrams per day, but many were looking at 10,000 or more milligrams per day, which is why I put a bunch in the shake. So RS, wonderful stuff, great to include. Dr. Christianson here with you. Take wonderful care. I'm back with you really soon. Bye-bye.